Do you remember what hopping into a car in the 70s feels like? The weird trinkets, the little window no one could use, the weird switches on the floor of some cars. Yep, the 70s were a wild time, and perhaps one of the best ways to see this is to look at the cars from the era. From gas caps that made you feel like a spy, to disappearing steering wheels, it seems like every car had something that made it unique and futuristic. But let's face it, not everything worked back then, and some car features were more stress than they were worth. Don't believe us? Well, then join us as we go back in time and look at some useless old car features that faded into history. Bench seats. Okay, this is perhaps one of the first things you remember about cars in the 70s. Forget the supercars today. Back in those days, cars weren't just machines. They were living members of the family, and in many cases, our dad's favorite child. And why wouldn't it be? Thanks to those big, soft bench seats that looked like your grandma's sofa, the family car looked more like a living room on wheels than a machine. I mean, throw in a shag carpet, and you quite literally have Dad's favorite room in the house. Turn on the radio, and getting him out becomes a mission for the gods. Wide enough to slide from one end to the other without a hitch, this chair was perfect for stretching out on a long road trip or sneaking in a nap between gas station stops. And speaking of road trips, these chairs quite literally made them a whole different vibe. You didn't just sit in the car, you hung out in it. Mom, Dad, and one of the kids squeezed in the middle. It was chaotic, cozy, and honestly kind of magical. But that magic is only the beginning, because the seat truly shines when you go to everyone's favorite way to spend a Friday night, the drive-in movies. To put it simply, this bench was the true MVP of any drive-in movie, especially when you went with a date. I mean, no center console meant date night got extra snuggly as you shared popcorn, held hands, and maybe snuck a kiss during the scary parts. It was a total vibe. But like most good things, they started disappearing. Soon enough, safety rules, center consoles, and bucket seats all chipped away at the old school charm. By the end of the 70s, those sofa-like thrones were slowly becoming history. But thankfully, classics like the Chevy Impala or the Ford LTD held on to the bench design that held a majority of our childhood memories. Vent windows. For those who don't know, the vent windows were those little triangular panes on the side of the car. You remember them, right? The ones that were supposedly to be the ultimate hack of airflow back in the day? The ones you'd flick open, hoping for a cool breeze, especially on those hot summer drives. Yeah, the ones that flopped and made that annoying rattling sound. I mean, sure, they look cool, but they didn't really do much. Okay, to be fair, they did let in a tiny bit of air, but once you stepped on the gas, forget it. They were about as useful as a pet rock. All they did was rattle and make that annoying sound like they were about to fly off. Not exactly the breezy experience we were hoping for. But to make it worse, the funny thing is, cars today still have those small triangular windows in that same spot. But now, they're just there for looks. No opening, no airflow, just a piece of glass meant to remind us of the good old days of design, even though they didn't really improve the driving experience. So basically, car manufacturers threw functionality out the window and kept the aesthetics. But what really killed those screaming windows was the adoption of air conditioning. See, as air conditioning took over, vent windows pretty much became obsolete. I mean, why fiddle with a tiny window when you got a button for instant comfort? The shift to AC made vent windows just a nostalgic symbol of an era when cars were evolving but hadn't quite figured it all out yet. Safe to say, we don't miss them. Landau bars. Okay, this one was truly useless. For those who don't know, Landau bars were those shiny S-shaped chrome pieces you'd see on the rear quarter panels of cars back in the day. Weird and tacky to us today, they were supposed to give the car a touch of class, like a nod to the elegance of horse-drawn carriages or even a Fox convertible roof. But let's be honest, those things sucked. And worse, they didn't actually do anything. No structural support, no added performance, just pure, shiny, expensive decoration. That is quite literally a design choice made for looks, not function. This thing was basically the same vibe as a giant spoiler on a base model sedan, or a gas, grass, or ass nobody rides for free decal. The OG all bark, no bite thing was loud, unnecessary, and just a little cocky, for no reason. However, in the 60s and 70s, these bars screamed luxury like no other. If you had them on your car, you weren't just driving, you were riding high, or at least that's what the chrome told everyone. But as time marched on, so did car design, and soon enough, people started leaning towards sleeker, more minimalist looks, and Landau bars became a symbol of a different era, one that was all about flash over subtlety. By the 80s, they were basically gone from new models, and with the exception of collectors, this was the end of the flashy bars from the past. Gas caps behind license plates. Now, this was a feature that at the time seemed super futuristic, but today is a big example of what were they thinking? Sounding more like a feature from the Jetsons than anything else, some cars in the 70s tucked their gas caps right behind the rear license plate. Yep, in a bid to be futuristic back in the 60s and 70s, this weird placement was all the rage. Essentially, you'd flip the license plate down like some kind of secret agent move, and boom, there's your gas cap in the weirdest place ever. Sure, it gave the car a cleaner look, smoother look from the outside, which designers loved. I mean, who doesn't love sleek lines with no unsightly filler doors? But oh boy, if you remember these things, you know that when it came to actually using it, it was anything but fun and glamorous. I kid you not, refueling meant bending down, sometimes in the rain or snow, trying to wedge the nozzle in while holding the plate down with your elbow. Yeah, not exactly user-friendly, especially if you were dressed for a night out or battling bad weather. And if that wasn't bad enough, there was also the safety issue. With this design, rear-end collisions weren't just fender benders. Oh no, they were a dance with danger that could turn into a serious fire hazard. That gas filler was sitting right in the danger zone, and let's say it didn't take much for sparks to fly. Thankfully, by the 80s, manufacturers said enough's enough and moved that filler to the side. But for those who lived through it, flipping that plate up always felt a little cool just when it wasn't raining or when you were dressed up. Color-coordinated vinyl roofs. One thing about cars is how easy it is to make them yours, and no era took that as seriously as the 70s. I mean, they had color-coordinated vinyl roofs. Don't know what that is? Well, let me jog your memory. In the 70s, nothing screamed class like the good old vinyl roof. I mean, why not? This was a color-coordinated top that matched your Blazer and your car. Jokes aside, these flashy trims were the automotive equivalent of bell-bottoms. Bold, confident, and just a little extra. Whether it was burgundy on burgundy or that deep forest green combo, a vinyl roof made you ride look like it belonged in a Cadillac showroom, or at least parked outside your favorite disco joint. But look aside, let's be honest, these things were all style, no substance. Vinyl roofs didn't keep you cooler, they didn't make the car faster, and they sure as heck didn't hold up forever. Anyone who had one knows that if you gave it a few summers under the sun and winters in the snow, that once smooth surface would be more cracked than a dry riverbed. Not to mention the worst case scenario when moisture sneaks under the edges and before you know it, boom, rust is having a field day under your once flashy roof. Then there was also the hassle of keeping them clean because, let's face it, the process took elbow grease, vinyl conditioner, and honestly a healthy faith in God with regular prayers. Plus, if you skipped upkeep, your car ended up looking like it had a bad toupee. So it's a no-brainer that by the 80s they fell out of favor, but in the end, for a hot minute, those roofs were the vibe. Opera windows. Okay, this was somehow more useless than the vent windows, and that's really saying something because those things rarely ever worked. But at least they had a function. See, the opera window is the definition of all looks and no brain. Back in the 70s, these over-glorified windows promised class and gave you a tiny, useless porthole in the back seat. I kid you not, these little oval or rectangular windows, tucked neatly into the C-pillar and framed by a vinyl roof, were all the rage in the 1970s. They were supposed to give off high society vibes, like what you get with velvet curtains and string quartets. In fact, by design, they were more about illusion than utility. Just seeing one made you think the car was driven by a guy named Gerald who smoked cigars and listened to smooth jazz. But let's not kid ourselves. They didn't open, didn't offer better visibility, and if anything, they made the back of the car feel smaller. They didn't help with providing light, and any hopes of it providing some fresh air are quite literally a dream you should forget. I mean, you couldn't even peek out of them unless you were a toddler. And as we all know, toddlers have no business with windows. Regardless of all these, back in the day, opera windows were the pinnacle of automotive sophistication. So much so that major cars like Lincoln, Cadillac, and even Chrysler all had them. But like mood rings and shag carpeting, they were a trend, not a legacy. And by the time the 80s rolled in with their clean lines and function-first designs, those little windows were out faster than disco. And honestly, we don't miss them. Fender skirts. In the 70s, we were obsessed with luxury. so something like fender skirts quickly became famous. I mean, what says luxury land yacht quite like covering up your rear wheels with a slab of metal? To put it simply, these stylish appendages were the automotive equivalent of a tuxedo's satin lapel. They were flashy, formal, and mostly for show. Debuting in the 1930s and peaking through the 50s to 70s, fender skirts gave cars that long, low, and elegant look that made it look as if the whole vehicle was gliding, not driving. But behind the glamour and luxury, these things were a lot of hassle. For one, fender skirts didn't make your car faster, safer, or even more efficient. In fact, they made changing a flat tire an even bigger nightmare by giving it extra steps and, of course, causing extra swearing. And if that was not bad enough, they were prone to cracking, warping, and becoming rust traps. I mean, what did you expect? All that trapped moisture underneath was bound to create a slow, creeping disaster for your wheel wells. By the time the 1980s rolled around, car buyers wanted less drag and more practicality, and so like many other things, out went the fender skirts, along with opera windows and vinyl roofs. Today, they're mostly seen on classic car restorations and vintage cruise nights, and as you would expect, they're less a sign of cutting-edge design and more a wink to a bygone era. Rotary headlamps. To be honest, these were kind of cool. I mean, if your car could blink in the 70s, chances are you were living your best life. Just look at it. These mechanical cheat codes showed up on cars like the 1966 through 67 Dodge Charger, and as we know, that was the car for anyone planning a killer summer. 1 second, your car's front grille looked like a seamless slab of chrome, and boom, you flipped the switch and watched it twist open like a secret agent's gadget. Cool? Absolutely. Practical? Not so much. See, while rotary headlights nailed the sci-fi aesthetic of the jet age, they came with a healthy dose of mechanical headaches. It's really hard to keep up the cool guy persona when motors fail. Linkages jam, the one light had a tendency to swivel while the other played dead, leaving your car look confused and half asleep. But that wasn't the worst part, because if somehow they got stuck shut, well, good luck explaining to the cop who just pulled you over for driving with invisible headlights. Functionally, rotary lamps didn't shine any brighter or help you see any better. They just added flair, weight, and eventual, unnecessary repair bills. By the time the 1980s hit, car makers realized that simplicity trumped showmanship. To be fair, pop-up lights stuck around a bit longer, but full-on rotary headlights were toast. Today, they live on in car shows and collector garages as flashy relics from a time when design dared to dream, even if it forgot to check the owner's manual first. Retractable steering wheel. Sure, a blinking headlamp looks cool, but what if your car had a steering wheel that quite literally moves away to make space for you? Well, if you were a kid in the 1970s, chances are you saw a wild-looking car in Popular Mechanics or a sci-fi flick and thought, whoa, the steering wheel disappears. Well, it turns out the retractable steering wheel was real. It was supposed to be an idea that screamed space-age cool and promised an effortless slide into the cockpit like you were piloting the Starship Enterprise. This quite literally looked like an idea that was inspired by the Jetsons, and concepts like the 1970 Ferrari 512S module and the Lancia Stratus Zero rolled with it. They had steering wheels that retracted, folded, or even vanished into the dash. And the point of this was supposedly making entering the vehicle easier and give the cabin a futuristic, uncluttered vibe. But like everything on this list, here's the catch. Cool didn't mean convenient, and these designs were all show, no go. The extra motors and linkages made them fragile and finicky, essentially meaning they were great on the auto show floor but terrible in a real parking lot. And if the mechanism makes the horrible mistake of getting jammed, well, hope you weren't in a hurry, or worse, trying to steer out of a tight spot, because you are in for quite a day. Even worse, with these designs, safety took a back seat. I mean, what happens if your retractable wheel decides not to come back mid-drive? That's not a design quirk, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Thankfully, by the time car manufacturers sobered up in the 80s, it was clear. Retractable steering wheels belonged in concept cars and Jetson reruns, not in your daily driver. So which of these useless old car features made you laugh or brought back memories? Was it the oversized bench seats that turned every road trip into a cozy hangout? Or maybe it was the vent windows that promised a breeze but only delivered rattles? Could it have been the Landau bars that screamed luxury but did absolutely nothing? These features were cool in their day, but let's be honest, most of them didn't hold up. Still, they're a fun throwback to a time where cars were all about style, even if they weren't the most practical. What do you think? Got any memories of these quirky features? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you're all about those retro vibes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more car talk. Until next time, keep cruising down memory lane.